Hi there, and welcome to another episode of listening to Francis Evans, who is channeling Mercredan with us today. What we're going to speak about today is manifesting within the paradox of life. And we're going to explore topics like when we're aware of, our lives and we're manifesting or creating our reality, how does it fit into the law of the paradox, and how we can learn new practices to become more aware of that. And so Francis should be just about ready. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you know any other people in your life who you think might be interested to share in this knowledge and wisdom, let them know too, and they can join in as well. Okay, Francis, over to you when you're ready.
Once again, it is my privilege and pleasure to come and spend these few moments of your time. Everything is interconnected, interdependent, interrelated. Everything is in balance, like a great body of water. The local environment affects the local currents. The currents affect the greater currents. And so it goes on until there is a joining together of all of the currents as it moves within the body of water. And yet it is still a single body of water, enough to begin our conversation.
Thank you, Mercredan. We've been talking lately about manifesting with the awareness of the opposite of our creation. So this week I thought we'd speak more about the law of paradox and how we can consciously create within the law of paradox. How does that law of paradox actually work?
Life begins as a unified whole. And in order for anything to, shall we say, manifest, there has to be the manifesting, the manifestor, and the background from which it emerges. And it is with focus and the application of attention that which is in the background comes into focus. Let us put it this way. In the beginning, when there was nothing, all potential existed. So the original manifestation was to bring out the background in which all potential exists. And so on it comes down into individual focus of attention. One is as one is because one has focused attention on being that. Out of all of the potentials that were possible, one chooses one and, shall we say, rejects the other. And that is why when one chooses a polarity, shall we say, one chooses to be masculine, one then casts out the opposite to take its place in the wider background. Now one chooses, shall we say, to recognize that which one has cast out because it is relative to that which one has retained. You understand, then one is attracted to that which completes the whole. You follow what I'm getting at? So one creates that which completes the self. If one is attempting, shall we say, to create what someone else decides is what you need, you will find it extremely difficult. So, shall we say then, paradox is in place because it creates the opportunities. You have what one needs, what one wants, and one has all the potential for everything else. So shall we say then one is complete? You understand, one is complete even as one defines oneself as incomplete. Because what one desires is what one does not have, yet within the whole of potential, one already has it. This is such a difficult context to understand. Does it shine some light?
Yes, it does. Thank you. So within that potential, we have what we need. Can you say a bit more about how we would recognize it more consciously?
Let us say this. One wants to create because one has a desire for something that one does not in the present moment have or occupy. Yet at the same time, one is resisting what one, shall we say, does not have. So one is both in resistance and in desire of the same thing. You understand what I'm getting at? So there is the idea that it is polar opposite to want and to not want, but in reality it is truly the same thing in a paradoxical state. So shall we, because this is so theoretical, one has to put it into practical terms. So what arises from this is one has all of the potential to create what one desires in order, shall we say, that is to attract it, to magnetize it out of the background into existence. And yet one has also the same time certain qualities of self that in resistance to that. If there were no resistance, one would automatically have what one desires. So the interplay is between wanting and resisting. Do you follow what I'm getting at? So, shall we say, if one deals with the resistance first, what is stopping one from manifesting what one wants? What is getting in the way of the flow of potential into manifest reality? From a scientific point of view, energy is what makes everything up. The accumulation of energy forms particles. The accumulations of particles within definite structures create elements and molecules that come together to form certain material objects. And all of this is in reality the magnetic function of the flow of energy. So if one is indeed attracting, one first of all has to define the structure of that. That is where imagination comes into play. First of all, one has to imagine a situation that is, how will this affect the totality of my life? Not just in the area of the manifestation, but in the totality of it. And in most cases, it is such a disorder or disorganization of the current form that one is comfortable within, as you call it, in one's comfort zone, that is where one has the least degrees of upsets, the least degree of change. You understand, if one wishes to manifest something of significance, one also has to change. To follow what I'm getting at. And if one is resistant to change, as most of humanity is, then you are caught within your comfort zone. You are effectively within your trapped zone. You understand?
Yes. So can you say a little bit more about what the resistance might look like?
The resistance is to changing. If one, shall we say, wishes to become wealthy with lots of assets and so on, one has to become such as that. And yet, if you think that such as that is, shall we say, not, shall we say, nice people, then you have to become in your own mind a not nice person, which is such a challenge. One has then to consider one's whole. Like in my allegory at the beginning, the ocean is a whole, and it plays a large part in the influence of every collective current down all the way to the local environment. Do you follow what I'm getting at? So it is as a unit within the whole of humanity, that is within that field of influence, that one is playing one's role. And that role has been defined by the fields of influence all the way down to the local set. You are, shall we say, conditioned into your role. Do you follow? So to change, one has to set oneself outside of the roles of that influence. One must create only within what is acceptable within one's role, or one has to transform oneself to a different perspective. Do you follow how all of this is interactive, interplaying with the rest of those fields of influence, family, community, and so on it goes. Do you follow what I'm getting at?
Yes.
So shall we say one wishes to create, one has first to make, shall we say, friends with the person one is to become, that is able, shall we say, to handle the creation. And that is why there is so much resistance to change.
Very interesting. So how can we become more aware of the paradox in our creations?
As I have said so many times, getting to know oneself, that is the definition one has chosen to acknowledge as self. That is what you consider your assets and your dysfunctions, and recognize that these are indeed your primary manifestations. These are the creations that define all other creations in your universe. So when one becomes clear with oneself, one becomes clean with oneself, one realizes there are certain, shall we call them, ideas and attitudes and beliefs that define the character of the role you are playing. In other words, if you are playing a part in a play, one has to behave as that character. And that is what defines what a great actor is. Someone who can set aside who they are in the world and become something else. And because they have that ability, they can create many things. They draw to them those things they desire, even if they are as yet unable to realize that every desire overrides a previous one. And so there is even trouble in that framework as well. One has to get to know oneself. One has to become the self that you want to be. That is your first creation. When you can look in your mirror and say, this is the self that I have always wanted to be, and I like it. Then one can begin, shall we say, to build the conditions that such a one would desire.
So you're saying that once we've handled our resistances by the fields that influence us and the role that we've shaped ourselves into, then we can stand in the role of being like somebody different to all of that. We can imagine that, and we can practice that more as that new creation of ourselves, and we can then expect what we desire to show up from the field of potential.
That is correct. Let us also say, in order to gain this insight, one also has to consider the history, that is the upbringing and the conditioning one has received, without judgment about it. So it is seen, it is recognized, it is allowed, and it is, shall we say, energized. So that one stands in the present moment, free of the past. If one denies the past, one will automatically stand in the present with a denial of the past. From there, one is simply trapped in the past. So the conditions are to free oneself from the past, to free oneself from the attitudes and ideas and the noise, if you like, that is in one's mind, and to stand in the present without any nonsense. Then one can create what one wants and it will become part of who one is.
So, in creating that new part that we wish to experience of ourselves, is there any other way you can share with us that we could use as a tool to let ourselves be free if we're encumbered by those conditionings?
I want to say this. There are these people, very wealthy people, who set up the challenge to give away everything and to see how long it would take them to accumulate more wealth. But it is obvious they are wealthy people. So automatically everything comes out of the environment to fulfill this notion. But that is not what it is for an unwealthy person at all. The unwealthy person already knows life is a struggle. And there it is. Nothing can be done while life is a struggle. You follow what I'm saying. So when one frees oneself from that, life is a party. Life is for picking up whatever you want at any time. And that, of course, irritates those people who think it is a struggle. Because there is what is called the real world. But of course, it is not the real world. It is the paradox for the real world. So shall we say attitudes are everything. If one gets the chance to give something, then it isn't the size of the giving that is important. It is the heart of the giving that is important. When you give something, so you are uplifting someone else. You are uplifted yourself. And in uplifting yourself, you create energy flowing in. To understand, it is an asset in the bank. The accumulation of energy coming back from even the smallest gifts. So it is not that one is giving in order, but one is giving for benefit to the other because they are indeed self. And that attitude and idea brings one into greater alignment with the overall current of the great body of water.
Right. Thank you. That's an amazing reading. Thank you, Mercredan.
All of these lessons, shall we say, are seemingly complex, seemingly difficult, and yet, as one applies the simplicity of the whatever one can gain, suddenly one moves and sees that one is gaining from the wider field of influence. One is giving to the wider field of influence. It is, shall we say, the ultimate give and take. So that is enough for today. Once again, thank you for your time and the work that is carried out in the wider fields of influence. Thank you, and it is time.
Thank you, Mercredan. So thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the essence of what we were exploring today around manifesting ourselves differently in paradox. And next week, Libby will be coming back in the next 4 days, and she'll be talking about something else to do with the spiritual development series that she's unfolding. So if you haven't liked this video, please like it, and we will continue to bring this beautiful and insightful work to you. Bye for now.